Hi, everyone. I'm Holly Miller with United Way Midland County, and welcome to the Max Loves Midland Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Max Loves Midland Show. I'm your weekly tour guide, Kevin LeDuc, and this is the show where we see Midland through your lenses. Whether you are watching on YouTube, whether you are listening on WSGW or one of the many podcast services that are out there, or if you are just catching some short clips online, we appreciate you being here with us today, as always. Make sure you're heading over to maxlovesmidland.com to check out all our resources, events in the community, and things you can do to engage and participate in community. And with me today, our next guest is a mom, a community member, a philanthropist, a friend, an entrepreneur. I am with the president and CEO of United Way of Midland County, Holly Miller. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Well, I know it's a busy time for you. We've got campaign season going on, so I appreciate you taking a moment to pause and reflect and talk with us today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope people come out of this learning a lot more about United Way.
Well, thank you. That's a great opportunity to talk about community.
And more importantly, they're going to learn a lot about you as well, because you are the star of today's episode, and we're going to see Midland a little bit through your lenses. So let's get started here. I know you've been in Midland now since, I don't want to date this. I'm a respectful gentleman here, but you've been in the community now for quite some time, and this is home for you now.
Yes, Midland is home now. I've been here since the late 1980s, dating myself, but it is home. And it has become our home. I didn't grow up here, but one of the questions I always ask is, how long do you have to be here before you're from here? And I think I fit that bill now.
You know, I think about that all the time, too. I'm from a nearby town here from Beaverton, and Midland was always my big city, and I've talked about it on the show over and over again, but it was a place I always wanted to be because there was so much activity going on. And I think we get tricked into this idea that Midland is such a small community, and I don't necessarily agree with that because we are doing big things regardless of population and regardless of the way it is perceived. But it's such a mix of people coming into Midland, whether you're from a smaller town or a larger town, there's opportunity here. And I just think it's great. And I consider it home now as well.
Great. Yeah, it is.
And so you're originally from Okemos, correct?
Yes, I grew up in Okemos. Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. So what was Midland to you at that point in time? Did you have any sort of even idea about Midland?
So I think the most exposure I had to Midland was in sports.
Okay.
So we were both Class A, Class B schools, and so we were often competing for a lot of the same titles, sports-wise. So there's a little friendly competition between the two.
Did you ever travel here for anything or have any memories of being here?
No, I played basketball, and I'm not going to say what year, but we were the state champions that year. And one of the teams that we went up against in the semifinals was Midland.
That's incredible. So you won a state championship in high school?
I was actually on the bench because the second to last game, I got injured. And so I was in a cast during that game, but the team was fantastic, and they did win the championship that year.
That's amazing. I played in a state championship in baseball, and we didn't get to win, unfortunately. But I'll tell you what, there's some of those memories that you have from those times in your life are some of the best. So I can definitely relate to that. So what brings you to Midland, though? I mean, you're from Okemos. You end up here. Like, what was your educational journey like post-high school?
So I graduated from high school early. I was, very anxious to get on with my life.
Okay.
I went to Kendall School of Design. I started actually at Lansing Community College while I was in high school, and then went on to Grand Rapids to Kendall School of Design and have a degree in graphic design and marketing. And that is where I spent the early part of my career, is really in the ad world. I started my career out at General Motors as the first female in an all-male art department. And I have lots of stories to tell about that. And then ended up going to work for GM's ad agency, and spent a decade plus working in that world. And I often say in the ad world, that people say, is Mad Men real? Is that really how it is? And to a certain extent, it's true.
Less cigarettes now.
Less cigarettes now, and a lot more coffee.
Absolutely.
However, it is a very deadline-driven, creative field. And so it was a really fun chapter in my life because everything was on the table. Creativity was just something. We used to have Nerf gun fights to break down barriers, right? And try to figure out kind of how we're going to tackle the next creative challenge. And so that was a really fun chapter in my life, but it also was a very draining. And so, in the ad world, it's all about billable hours. Your value is based on billable hours, and I was very valuable, and realized, about 10 years into my ad world career that I need a better balance in my life. And I'll be honest, the pivot point for me was waking up in the back of an ambulance in my 20s and having suffered a minor stroke with no underlying health conditions simply because I was stressed out and exhausted. And that has been a benchmark
Yeah,
in my life because that changes you.
absolutely.
It makes you kind of reassess, like, am I going to do this to my death? Like, what am I doing with my life? And so I loved my career, but I also knew that I needed to make some changes. And I was very fortunate that the owner of the company I was working with also saw that potential for me. And so I said, I kind of want to go out on my own and create a little bit more balance. Because at the time, I should back up, I was commuting for 6 years between Lansing and Midland. I was living in Midland. My husband was working in Grayling, and we decided to call Midland home because it was halfway between. You know, it makes no sense now when I look back. And people often say, how did you commute 3+ hours a day for 6 years? I go, you just can't think about it.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. You don't. It's later that you go, that's not probably a great use of time.
That compound pressure, the routine was weighing.
Yeah, but we did it for our family. We all wanted to be in a central location and not so disjointed, and so it was a very intentional decision. But the commuting was a commitment, and it was a weight. And so it was another pivotal point in my life where I kind of took a risk, and I said, I need to do something different. I don't want my kids losing their mother, and I certainly don't want them to remember that she had a great job, but she was never home and she was never around. That's not how I wanted to be remembered, and that wasn't who I was as a human being.
Right.
And so I worked with the owner of the company and said, I want to go out on my own. And he said, well, would you work with us for a year? And I said, for 1 year. But if I can't stand on my own 2 feet after a year, then I have no business doing this. And I started my own small boutique ad agency and ran that for 16 years and loved it because it gave me the flexibility to be a human, to be a part of a community again, instead of just someone who slept here. And to be available to my kids and be a mom, which was really important to me to have both. And I know that is rare to be able to have
Extremely
a
rare.
career and be a mom. And that is such a blessing. And in retrospect, because that's not available to everyone.
It's really interesting, and I know we're getting off on a little bit of a tangent here, but earlier today I met with Kathleen Haney, who's a young business owner here in town, and she was actually talking about doing some sort of show here at JNC Media. And one of the things that really stuck with me that she said was almost the exact words you just said. I have passion for being an entrepreneur in this space because I want to work with other women to show what it's like to be a mom and a business owner and being able to function in a community at the same time. And I think that's a dream that doesn't get actualized enough.
It isn't. You know, today's world demands that often both parents are in the workforce. And so trying to balance that with making sure that you have balance in your house and with your kids. I often said, I ask my kids now because they're grown, I said, what was the biggest thing I got wrong? Or what's your critique, right?
Such a loaded question,
I know
Holly.
it
Don't
is.
put them in that spot.
But I think that, they reflect, they go, oh my gosh, my mom was at everything. Like she was there. And I said, that's also the good news. Right? At the time when you're a teenager, you're kind of angsty and like, my mom again. But looking back, that's really important to me that I showed up and I was present and I was able to do both.
Yeah.
And I've never, ever regretted that.
That's amazing. And so they had their educational journeys here in Midland then, correct?
Yes, my kids grew up here in Midland. We chose Midland because it's such a welcoming community.
Absolutely.
And because I loved the sense of community that was here. And that's exactly what drew me. Because there was a lot of places in between we could have chosen, and this was it.
So what was their educational tract like here then? Where did they graduate high school, and
Both
where
of
did they
my
go to
kids
school?
were proud Bullet Creekers.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I love Creek.
I know the Bullet Creek. It's it was to me growing up in a Class A school, much like Midland is. I chose Bullet Creek intentionally because it was still a big enough school district to have a lot of opportunity, but small enough to have that intimate community. And where we ended up living was just about 5 miles from the local elementary school. And it got us involved in the community because Bullet Creek doesn't have a city.
Right.
So it has a school system and a community. And we immersed ourselves very quickly into that.
That's super cool. So was Charlie your superintendent?
So yes, Charlie was. I actually hired Charlie as superintendent. I worked with many superintendents throughout the years. I actually served on the Bullitt Creek School Board for
That's super
12
cool.
years. But yes, Charlie and I have a wonderful history, and our kids grew up together in Bullitt Creek.
That's super cool. I love that.
It's
So being a business owner here in town, what was that like for you, and how were you getting up on your feet, and what was the hustle like for you? Because there is some hustle of getting a business around.
Yes. So I think I'm an entrepreneur at heart. That is really, and I think that stems from creativity and wanting to build and develop things. Oftentimes in design, you're thinking about building a design, building a logo, building a campaign.
Right.
For me, creativity takes many forms, and building a business is a creative outlet because there's so much unknown and there are problems to solve creatively. If it were already done, you wouldn't be actually jumping into it. And so walking into the unknown, to me, is fun. Now, I know that's not everybody's gig, but for me, that kind of provided the tension I think I needed to be like, "Ooh, this is kind of fun." I will tell you, though, there are many sleepless nights. Being an entrepreneur is no joke. We tell this funny story when our family, one of my biggest clients ended up being the state of Michigan. And I did a lot of magazine work for Michigan History Magazine and Michigan History for Kids. And my kids were integrated into my work at the time because they were my models for everything. Everything I was shooting, they were like, "You're in. You have to do it."
What a benefit, too.
Right? And still to this day, my son is like, "Geez, Louise, I still see myself in posters."
It's like I was in this random restroom and like, what is going on?
Right? They got to be a part of my business world, and they got to be a part of it. It's kind of funny. In an early age, my kids knew how to use InDesign, and they knew how to use Illustrator, and their homework projects looked very different than others. And they're like, "Wait a minute, I didn't do it. They did it." But it's just part of their culture. So it's interesting here in Midland because I had lived here for over 6 years, but I hadn't really worked here. And so my first foray was volunteering. I thought the best way to get to know this community is to spend time in it. And there used to be a project, I don't know if it still goes on here in downtown, where you would have all the windows and you would design the windows. And so it made it really appealing. And I volunteered. I kind of took a stab at it. I thought, "Ooh, this could be fun." Right? I started volunteering within the schools. I was working out at West Midland Family Center, volunteering with them. The chamber had a Don't Freak Speak program where they're looking for volunteers to teach kids about public speaking. I'm like, "Sign me up."
That's awesome.
So I wanted to immerse myself in my community because I hadn't really had the ability to do that when I was obviously commuting back and forth.
That's super cool. And I just really admire hearing where other people in this industry come from and your journeys. And I think we all have one of those pivotal moments where we understand, oh, wait, this is kind of the space that I want to be in. And at the time period that I graduated was really the rise of social media, and those pieces were really starting to come alive, and content was looking way different. And I did 4 years of yearbook class in high school and absolutely loved it. And I always joke that I turned a yearbook into a career because that's kind of what we're doing around here, right? Like we're marketing, we're communicating, we're putting those words and those photos together and finding interesting ways to tell stories about our organizations and tell stories about this community and the great work that's done in our nonprofit space. So I always fell in love with it through that. But I think you have a pretty compelling story as well about what drew you to want to be in the creative field before you kind of flourished and
into the
became this
nonprofit.
full butterfly.
Yes, I know, right? Life is a journey.
Absolutely.
So there are two people that really heavily influenced me. I wanted to be a psychology major. Go figure. But I had a seventh grade teacher named Mrs. Hoyt. And I was always known as an avid reader. I was always reading above grade level, and I loved to write. And so I had her for language arts in 8th grade. And I remember turning in my first paper to her, and I'm like, easy. I always get A's in English. And she gave it back to me. I had a B+ on it, and I was mortified. Not that a B+ is bad, but it just wasn't in math, maybe, yes. And so I talked to her after class, and I said, "I don't understand. I thought I did the assignment well." She said, "I've been watching you. You can do better." And that is still the voice in my head that says, we should never settle for good enough. We should always strive for excellence in everything we do because we have God-given talents that need to be refined, and we shouldn't coast through life. We need to accelerate through it.
And you took those gifts and you brought it into the entrepreneurial field. And after working in that space for quite some time, you also took those passions you had, and obviously you were volunteering on school board, and you started volunteering to be out in the community, and you started working with these different organizations. So what led you to United Way? And it isn't the role that you're in right now. You were led to United Way in a little bit of a different direction.
Yes, I did not have the traditional path into nonprofit leadership, I will tell you that it was my volunteer life that led me here.
Yeah.
I was working with the schools. I was a big for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Both of my kids were actually bigs as well. And we spent a lot of time as a family volunteering. This was a key value. We used to serve dinners to those that were experiencing homelessness. I always wanted my kids to understand and be grateful and recognize that not everyone lives the same life we live, and to have compassion and empathy for others and always be reaching back. And so it was that really drew me to nonprofit. And I reached a pivotal point. You know, we have all those chapters in our life where you kind of reach a crossroads. And for me, it was my daughter was getting ready to graduate from high school. All the value of owning my own business and having flexibility was walking out the door. And I really had to sit with myself and say, gosh, where am I at? And what I felt was I'm losing my passion for creative ways to sell widgets. But I'm really seeing an ignition in my compassion and passion for serving people. And an opportunity was available at United Way. And I took a bold left turn, left my business behind, and started my nonprofit journey.
Did you try and do both at the same time at all? Or?
I did try to do both for a while, and I had one client that just was like, "You can't leave me," and so tried to do that balance. But once I immersed myself in the community, and especially with United Way, because United Way serves so many diverse agencies and so many diverse people.
Yeah.
That for me, I found myself just being drawn into community in a way that I had never been drawn into it before, and being able to have conversations with people that maybe I hadn't seen in the past at the highest level. And so it became my passion. And I think I started out with a part-time role, and within 6 months it was a full-time role. And within a few years, I was serving as the vice president and really helping support strategy within United Way.
Absolutely. And then you took that and you moved to an organization that also we've mentioned already that's very important to you, and that's Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Yes.
And that must have been a leap as well.
It was. I think I live on a diving board sometimes, for all the leaps that I keep taking. But
I think that's healthy.
It is
That's
healthy,
right?
A little risk in life is not a bad
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. Risk can be good.
It is, right. I think there's there's a thrill in taking risks.
Absolutely.
Right? As long as you land well. And so I had an opportunity with Big Brothers Big Sisters. They were looking for a new executive director, and that was my heart. I got into nonprofit work because I was so committed to helping kids, especially at-risk kids, and that really their mission spoke to me. And so while it was just almost impossible to think about leaving United Way because I love it, I had this opportunity to grow and to understand what it feels like to be a funded partner versus being a person who is funding nonprofits,
Right.
which was a very different perspective and one that I was ready to undertake. And so I joined Big Brothers Big Sisters and had the opportunity to serve them for 3 years through some pretty big transitions.
That's absolutely incredible. And then obviously the opportunity came back to return to United Way of Midland County, and I think it's something you couldn't say no to.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I remember when Ann Fillmore had announced she was retiring. I was in Florida, and my phone just started blowing up. And the first question...
So much for vacation.
Right, yeah, so much for vacation. And the first question people ask was, are you coming back? And it's kind of interesting because I love United Way, but I love Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Right.
And my first answer was, no, I'm happy where I'm at. I don't often live my life in reverse. And it wasn't until some people who I really care deeply about really challenged me to think differently. They said, you are an impact person. You are driven by creating change for people. At Big Brothers Big Sisters or anything that you've done, you've created impact. But at United Way, you have the ability to exponentially create impact. We really think you should consider it. And that's not often that the people who work for you encourage you to leave. And I'll never forget, 2 of them independently had come to me and said, you've trained us well. You prepared us well. It's time for you to go. You need to go back. And I did, and was chosen as the next CEO for United Way, which has been a very humbling and honoring experience.
I was just thinking that word too, humbling. It's got to be, because, we're proud of the work we do. And I can tell that you are proud of your career and you're proud of what you've been able to accomplish. But sometimes we still have those moments that are like, oh, okay. And we have to reflect and we have to look back. And What a gift. And thank you so much for being in that role, because it takes bold community leaders, and we're surrounded by so many incredible ones that uphold institutional organizations. Yourself, I'm lucky to work with Sharon, but like really across the board, you look at leaders in our community, we have strong community leadership, and it takes people taking those jumps to get to that space. And then it takes people wanting to learn from these people as well.
Exactly.
So, and I just think that's such an incredible gift.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it has been an honor to serve alongside all community leaders and all of our partner agencies and my incredible team. I don't take anything
staff
for
is
granted.
awesome.
My staff is incredible,
Really
right?
good.
And no, you can't have them. They belong to me. But yeah, and I think the thing that I celebrate, and this is true of all nonprofits, we are here because we are intrinsically motivated for impact. We genuinely, it sounds so contrite to say we want to change lives, but genuinely, we want to change lives.
Yes.
And we sacrifice daily and make that our North Star every single day. And to have a team, no matter what their function is, that can see their piece of that, whether they are doing finance, whether they are out making community presentations, whether they're coordinating volunteers, they all understand that they are living our mission no matter what their role.
So I want to talk about United Way as a blanket organization. I think United Way has an extremely strong brand, and it's recognizable in just about every community across the country, right? But sometimes people hear something, but they don't really know how it functions, because it's not like a store. You don't walk into United Way and look around and understand, like, here's the branding, right? Like, you walk into Target, you're in Target. But in terms of United Way, what is United Way? Like, why? Like, what is this organization? Why does it exist?
So I think we're celebrating our 105 years of creating impact.
That's
in our
amazing.
Community. Yeah, and often people thought United Way was a fundraiser, right? Because they would hear about United Way during the fall campaign.
Right.
That's the how. That's not the what.
Yes.
So United Way is an impact organization, and it is very complex. But at its very core and heart, it is bringing the community together to change lives. It is never about us. It is always about how we pull together every single facet of our community to ensure we're working collectively to solve our most pressing health and human service issues.
And United Way is much larger than just an organization that is looking to raise money for local nonprofits. You guys are also community leaders and conveners in our spaces as well. Can you just talk about some of the functions of United Way that might not be something that people see on the forefront?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? If you look at what is the business model for United Way, so many people, I think even decades ago, would say, "Oh, they're a fundraiser," right? And really, we're an impact organization. But the way that we achieve that is very interesting, and it's an untold story. Maybe we need to do better. But I think first and foremost, we use data. Like we are cultivators of data, and purveyors of it, and helping to understand how data tells a story. The other key value we have is listening. And I know that is a shared value we have with everyone in this community. But we have spent a lot of time listening to the folks that our nonprofits serve. Because at the end of the day, if we're not listening to what their aspirations are and what success looks like, we're going to end up prescribing solutions that aren't helpful. And so we use a lot of that listening and data. Additionally, it's about engagement and convening, right? Problems in our community, in any community, are complex. And there isn't a single entity, person, or organization who can create change singularly. So what United Way really does is just bring everybody to the table and make sure that they all feel invited and a part of the solution. And we find common ways that each of us can play a role to actually attack and ultimately impact those challenges. We are always stronger together, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that isn't just a slogan. I think about the many things that Midland has done innovatively. I'm going to use the flood as an example.
Oh my gosh.
Gosh, right? I mean, maybe even back up.
You and I were sitting on weekly calls talking about communicating.
We were.
At that point in time.
The flood was a great illustration of our community in action. And it wasn't about organizations. It was about people. And Sharon and I both provided leadership and others. It was, I've never seen such selfless leadership that was so laser-like focused on helping people. It was humbling.
Absolutely.
And it was complex and it was overwhelming all at the same time. Because I remember the first call we had, the Royal Cajun Navy was the first organization that showed up.
Yep.
And I have to share a story because this was so emotional for me. Because as you can imagine, we were all just we hadn't slept in days. You know,
No,
when
not at
people
all.
are hurting, we're pushing forward. And I remember my team just walked back through the door because you have to remember we're going through a pandemic. And the whole team walked in day one and said, "Okay, what do we need to do?" And I didn't ask them to do that; they were compelled to do that. So anyway, the Royal Cajun Navy showed up. It was our first VOAD, Voluntary Organization Active in Disaster, and they showed up day one. And we were, as you can imagine, it's organized chaos, trying to make sure we have getting insulin to people and power. And they had airboats, and so they're out like delivering things to places, and we're just trying to be a hub to say what's the most pressing need right now that we can deal with. And he sat in my office that afternoon, and he said, "Is Midland always like this?" I said, "Tell me more." I said, "No, flooded, no. I mean, we have had some floods, but
thankfully we're not always
normally
flooded.
we're not underwater,
Yes.
right?" And he said, No. He said, "Holly, I've been out in your community. And I've been walking around doing assessments, and I've never seen anything like this." He said, "There are kids with wagons taking water to their neighbors. There are neighbors going around handing out free pizzas and subs because people are hungry. And there's just people walking around just saying, 'What can I do to help? Can I help you carry stuff out of your house and bring it to the curb?'" I go, "Well, of course. I would expect nothing less from Midland." And he's like, "Cherish that. I've been doing this work for 30 years and I've never, ever seen a community like this." And that stuck with me because it's true.
Yeah.
Like when we talk about what makes us unique, it's that.
Well, on that same note, in that same year and same time frame, at the Community Foundation, we had people come forward. We got our youngest donor ever. She was a young girl named Ellie. She was 3. She opened a lemonade stand to help flood victims.
I love that.
And then a young gentleman, and you might even remember Memphis, who was collecting cans. He opened a fund with us, and he had like semi-trucks full of cans. So people had to volunteer because you couldn't just... No one thinks like when you're doing this can drives, you have to go return them somewhere. And
Right,
it's the
it
middle
takes
of a
time.
pandemic as well. So he was having people volunteer for him at 8 years old to go return cans. And these are just micro stories of impact.
Oh, yeah.
They aren't the large ones, but they're all over the place. And it took all of us in just different ways. And I think it was just such a great example for those of us who work in organizations to see our leaders collaborating in such meaningful manners, but just moving the needle on, what it takes to actually get through this. And I'm sure it's the same way with you. There's phone calls coming in all the time about, hey, talk to us about how this process went. What did this look like from the long-term recovery group aspect, and how did that convene, and how did everyone come together? And it's really became a model on how to respond to disasters, not only locally, but also nationally.
Yeah, I would say, one of the stories that from the micro, those really small stories, to the macro, like Dow literally turning their hangar into a way station for the amazing in-kind donations that came through our doors. You saw it in every sector of our community. I've never seen us more connected when we were so disconnected because of circumstances. And that has forever shadowed, maybe shadow is the wrong word. It's always inspired me to say, there is no challenge we can't overcome together. Every challenge singularly will feel overwhelming, but it's really how we share the burden and how we each play to our strengths where you really find success and community.
Big time. And that is just one example of the impact of United Way, but also just nonprofits in our community at large, just responding to changes and community need. And community need is ever changing all the time. And it looks different year to year, looks different season to season, and sometimes it looks different day to day, depending on what's going on in our world and what's going on locally. But something that is a constant is always the United Way campaign each fall. And that campaign, you're raising funds, and it is so important to your partner organizations. Obviously, you have a lot of partner organizations. What does that mean to be a partner organization of United Way, and how does that relationship function?
Yeah, it's a great question. So United Way partners with all nonprofits.
Yeah.
But we only fund 25 of them on a regular basis. So, I always say that United Way is the original collective impact organization. If you even harken back to our roots in the before the Depression and even during the Depression, United Way was performing things called soup kitchens. Well, what were those in history? What it was neighbors all bringing what they could find, scraps of food and different things, and coming together to provide meals for the community so people didn't starve. And that whole concept is still alive and well today. If you think about the very diverse needs in our community, there isn't a single organization that can solve them all. And it's by bringing everybody together with each of them playing a role in a specific, we fund programs. And these programs are aligned with what the community had told us are the most pressing health and human service issues. And so that is our funded partner group and our partner agencies but one of the untold stories about our partner agencies that I always try to shine a light on, they are so passionate about community. They sacrificially live their missions.
Big time.
Every single day. In an environment of scarcity often.
Big time.
Right? But the untold story is the incredible ways they work together and that network that they create. I often think about it like a net, right? If you think about a safety net for our community, each of our nonprofits plays a role, and that is a wider open net. But the way that they collaborate with each other to reduce redundancies and make sure that people don't fall through, they tighten that net together. And and it's such a organic experience. I have so many examples, but one that really stands out was recently, we know how important water safety is. And there was a program nationally that was coming to Midland to help those with developmental disabilities learn water safety. Well, the community center, we allocate dollars for recreation, right? And it's pretty nuanced, you know, because there's a lot of different recreation opportunities. And they called and said, we want to use some of those dollars to help young kids with developmental disabilities learn water safety. There were no additional dollars needed. That was just another way that they had that connection with each other and said, wait, I have a need here and you have a resource, and they brought it together. Another one is the Legacy Center and Greater Midland. We fund a lot of child care scholarships and preschool scholarships to ensure that early childhood education is accessible to all.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Legacy Center does a lot with literacy and overcoming any kind of challenges folks are experiencing. So now they just integrated, no more cost, and they have now tutors that are at their after-school programs, you know, on a regular basis to make sure kids are getting that extra little boost as well. And those are things that just happen organically. I mean, I have a list of probably 80 or 90 different collaborations that demonstrate that ability to work collectively.
We're so fortunate to be able to see that every day in our fields, too. It's just so great to see the way that our organizations work together, our people work together, and it's for the greater good of our community members. And that's what makes it so special is it's not about ego, and it's 100% about steadfast community change. And I think that, you know, a reoccurring theme on this show is always, what is your community role? Like, what is your role in community? Like, how do you bring your skills to things? Like, and I think that is just embodied in our nonprofits here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And it's just such a special thing. And you know, the campaign for you guys, what is it? How does it actually run? Like, what is the time frame on that? Is it the same every year? How does it function? What are we looking at for goals? And how do people chip in?
Right. So the community campaign generally runs from early September through the end of October, early November, but really it runs all year long. We have many organizations that say, can I run mine in April? And we're like, absolutely, right?
Just to diversify that way of doing it.
And many others want to look at it at the end of the year, and we encourage that as well. But many of our bigger community partners run their campaigns in September and October.
Okay.
And the goal this year is to raise $4.4 million. But the goal every year is to generate impact.
Yeah.
Right? That is why the dollars are how, they're not the what. And if you imagine the ways that we're investing into each of those 25 nonprofit partners into programs specifically tailored to meet the most pressing challenges we face, that's the beauty. And that return on investment is huge. You know, it's one of the things, I remember when I first came back to United Way, and I did a lot of listening because, you know, having been there for 9 years, I knew a lot.
Yeah.
But I sat down with our nonprofit partners, and the first question I ask is, if United Way goes away tomorrow, what happens? Right?
I bet it was pretty grim answers.
Well, but you know what? It helped me to understand what our value is.
Yeah.
And to really be humbled by that, and perspective, right? And the answers I got were, we could not do what we do without you. And not just from a financial perspective, but the fact that United Way recruits volunteers for their programs. United Way helps bring our community together. Recently at our kickoff, we built 1,500 personal care kit items, shoulder to shoulder, to make that available to everyone. The people who are putting those kits together will never meet the people probably that receive them, but that's community too. And so the other thing that I learned is, I said, the United Way, because of the partnership, it makes us better. It makes us stronger. And our missions are actually more achievable because we have a network that we're working together to tackle challenges. If one agency is struggling with something, they bring it to the whole and we talk about it. And chances are the solution resides in the group, which is always true. The solutions to any challenge always reside in us. It's how do we come together to actualize them.
Amazing. And your guys' campaign this year, I know each year you kind of have a theme, and I always look at the branding on it, and I think it's great. And it's around storytelling, which I think is just incredible too.
Stories are a great way to illustrate change. And I always encourage anyone I talk to, United Way is not a philosophy, right? It's not something that happens in isolation. These are real people that we're impacting.
Yeah.
Now, you may never meet them, but trust me, you are a part of their story. And every single one of us can play a role in changing the life of another person. And I try to live that mantra every day, whether it is opening the door for someone, right? You just never know how you're planting seeds of hope in other people. Sometimes it's stopping and listening and making sure someone feels heard and seen. I remember recently meeting with a young woman who was experiencing some challenges, and I said, I just want to know, what does your life look like, and what can I do to help you? What can our community do? What can we learn from you? And so I think that that's kind of an undercurrent in everything that we do. That's the micro, right? And then it leads up to the macro. But if you think about their nonprofits as a whole, the United Way campaign is really celebrating the ways in which they are collectively coming together to create solutions. And also for people in our community to understand we all are in need at some time in our life. I just had recently was talking about this for myself.
Yeah.
When my husband and I were first married, he was back in college full time and I was supporting us. We were Alice.
Yeah.
I didn't have a term for it, and I certainly did not think to ask for help because I didn't know that help was there, or nor would I even think it was accessible. But I remember the struggle. I remember rolling pennies to buy milk. I remember getting that ATM balance and looking at it and going, I can't take any money out of the bank because I don't have any today.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is humbling.
Big time.
And I think it provides empathy for that. This is a lived experience that many people have. And while I don't have that experience today, I still can understand what it feels like for others. And we have many people in our community that have to make tough choices every day that are working hard, sometimes 2 and 3 jobs. And then it's that emergency, that one thing that can trigger a domino effect that leaves them feeling hopeless and helpless. And I think that's another untold story of how United Way can help. And it's not about United Way. It's about how we bring everybody together. One of the programs that I love shining a light on is LIFT. It's called Leveraging Income for
Absolutely.
Tomorrow. And it was born out of the pandemic and the rising numbers of people who were hardworking and working every day, who were dealing with having their hours cut or dealing with unemployment issues, right? That was pretty pervasive. And so it was born out of that struggle as a stopgap, because often, 211 was a valuable community resource, but people would call 211 and be told, you make too much to qualify for any help. And that's not what you want to hear when you have a hole in your roof or when your transmission just went out and you don't have any money to fix it. And so the heart behind LIFT was really to turn that no into a yes. And it was a bold initiative. It had never been done before. It was innovative. It was risky.
Yeah.
But the very premise of it is, if we can stabilize someone in crisis that's hardworking, we can keep them employed. We can keep them as part of our economy, rather than having them slide down into poverty. And it's been hugely successful.
I just hope people can walk away and understand there are resources. And I know that it is so tough because when you go to that space to ask for help, when somebody's asking for help, it is a tough thing to do. And it's tough for all of us. But, when they're actually searching for that, like there are resources out there.
Yes. And so that is a message that I try to do. I try to portray that message in everything we do, because you're absolutely right. Asking for help is very humbling. I myself have struggled asking for help.
Yeah.
Right? It is not something, it makes you feel like there's something wrong. There isn't.
Even with a day-to-day task, can you imagine it being that much weight? It's amplified.
But the thing is, when you're struggling with whatever it might be, there's that weight can be lifted because there's a community that cares about you, that is providing the resources you need. You just may not know about it.
Absolutely.
And so I always encourage folks, don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out to 211. Rather it is you're struggling with food, you've gotten a shutoff notice, maybe you got a cancer diagnosis, and now you feel so isolated and alone and you don't know where to turn next. Maybe you have a child who's struggling with mental health struggles. Call 211. That is our information referral system that can connect you with all the vast resources in Midland. And Midland is blessed. We have more resources than most. And I think if there were one message I would send out to the entire community is that no one should struggle alone. Help is available. Rather that comes in the form of financial support or a friend.
Yeah.
But we are here, and we all have these caring hearts. It's part of our culture.
Yeah. And so, wrapping up this idea of the campaign, I know you have some great partners that are acting in the space of being able to supply some matches, and donations can really be amplified. How can folks get involved?
Giving is easy. It's as simple as going to our website at unitedwaymidland.org. But more importantly, I invite everyone to be a part of it. Whether you commit to volunteering this next year or you commit to giving.
So many great opportunities to volunteer from United Way as well. You guys are really the backbone of volunteerism. So
well, and sometimes when talking with our nonprofit partners, without volunteers, many of their programs can't run. So it's twofold. It's dollars as well as people. Sharing their hearts, sharing their expertise, and sharing their time.
Yeah.
But as far as the campaign, one of the things I think a lot of folks struggle with is, how can I make a difference? Maybe I have $20.
Yeah.
How can I make a difference? And I go back to the starfish. Have you ever seen the starfish story?
I would love to hear it.
So, it's, there's this legend that there was a gentleman walking on the beach and he saw a child that had seen starfish. Like thousands of starfish had washed up on the beach. And he saw this child picking one up and throwing it in the sea and picking up the next one and throwing it up. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, they will die if they don't get back out into the water." He said, "Surely you can't impact all of them." He goes, "No, but I can impact that one." And he threw it back in the sea. And I think that's community. There isn't one person who's going to write a check to sustain all of our nonprofits, but rather you give $2 or $2,000 or $20,000. You are a part of community change, and you are part of providing that hope and help to people. And it may be you someday. It may be your family, your friends, your neighbor. But to me, that is Midland at its core. It doesn't matter the amount. Just get involved. Yeah. Be a part of the community. We're all are welcome.
And, this work is so close to your heart, and it's part of who you are. And I think a lot of times when we're working in this nonprofit space, it's hard for us to sometimes separate ourselves from the work a little bit. And I don't think we should necessarily. It is part of who we are, and it's part of our mentality and personalities. But when you're outside of those four walls of United Way, right over in the West Main Historic District, I live a few blocks away from your office. Where can you find Holly? Like, what are you doing for fun around here? Like, what does life look like outside of the office for you?
It's such a great question because as you know, your life at work spills into your life out of work.
Absolutely.
But I would say that if I were to think about a Saturday.
Yeah. What does the day look like for you?
Yeah, the day, waking up, let's say it's Saturday, I'm going to head to farmer's market, right, first and foremost, and kind of check that out. And I'll bump into 5 or 6 different friends and get caught up, which is, filling my tank. It's grabbing my grandkids, who are adventurers at heart. They always say Nana's synonymous with adventure. And so let's pack up the car, let's go to one of the many parks, and let's go play. They love Chippewa Nature Center.
Okay.
Going out and catching frogs and hiking the trails. They're adventurous. They want to be outside all the time. But the many parks, going to the splash pad, right?
Amazing.
When
yeah.
you're 4 and 6, adventures are going to the splash pad and catching frogs. But then spending some time with them, and then maybe, walking downtown. We love to go down to the commons.
It's just so great.
It is so great
It's
because
awesome.
we're all diverse in our menu selection,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So grab a picnic table. Everybody can get what they want to eat. The kids are playing games. They're being able to be their feral selves and play with other kids and hang out. There's usually live music, so then
Yeah.
you've got some music going on, but we can all relax and just settle in to being a part of the community. And for me, and I'm sure this is true for you too, but everywhere you go, you run into people you know.
Absolutely.
And then you also run into people you don't know. And I always try to make sure that I am an ambassador. If I find somebody on the street by themselves, I'll walk up and introduce myself and say hi and welcome them, because I always think we need to make room in our circles for more people, always. And I think that is definitely a value that is shared in this community.
So great. And speaking of our community, if we're looking forward at the future of our community, what are some of your hopes and dreams for Midland?
Yeah, I think Midland is an amazing place to live, and it has a story through the years. I'm going to answer your question by telling you a story.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity about 10 years ago to really to capture some of the stories of our matriarchs and patriarchs, people in their 80s and 90s at the time, and to capture their stories, right? Because they own our history. And so I asked them a lot of questions and really just tried to capture that. But one of the two key questions that I asked, that I share often, is one was, what's changed in Midland since you were a kid? And I got such diverse answers.
Yeah.
Some would talk about how the circle had evolved, wagons, right? The Sears building, Walmart, or what was it called? Different stores downtown.
Yeah,
here,
for
right?
sure.
And so everybody had a different, opinion about different buildings that were built and torn down, and roads that had changed names and venue. And it was very diverse. There wasn't really a single theme about what had changed in Midland, because life has changed, right? We're constantly evolving and growing. So the next question I asked was, what hasn't changed since you were a kid in Midland? And that was probably one of the most humbling moments of my career, because every single answer held the same thing. And the thing that hadn't changed in their 80, 90 years living here was this power of caring, and that we were a community that valued people and wanted everyone to feel supported and seen, and that we genuinely care for them. And that's not true in every community. And I think while it was humbling to hear that, I think for me, the thing that I took to heart was, this is the legacy that they have created for me. This is also now my legacy to create for others. And that's a really powerful North Star.
And thank you for being here with us today. It's been so heartwarming, and just really had a great time learning more about you. And I just want to know, is there anything else that you want people to know about the campaign, or anything else that's going on with the United Way of Midland County?
Yeah, so one of the things, again, I encourage everyone, get involved in your community. Raise your hand. Step up, whether that is giving through the annual campaign, volunteering, or lending your voice for those who may not have a voice. But also, one of the key tenets of United Way is leverage, right? We want to make sure that we're using those resources that are entrusted to us in the most intentional way. And one of the ways we do that is through a couple of different matching grant opportunities that take your donation and leverage it and match it. And so if you visit our website, you'll see different ways that you can double your dollars and really double your impact. But the other message I would say, and this I mean wholeheartedly, it isn't the size of the gift, it's the contribution. I want everyone to know that even from the smallest child that can give $3 to the person who can give $30, that contribution will change a life. And the value of United Way is in the way that we collectively come together with all of our contributions to create change.
Awesome, man. Holly, thank you so much for being here, but not only just for being here, for being such a great model of someone in this industry. I look up to you in this marketing and communication space, and it's great to learn from you. And I think that that's something Midland's done for a long time. We learn from those that are modeling great behavior and just look up to them. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Kevin. This has been such a joy. And again, I learned from you as well.
Hey, thank you. It's been great to see Midland through your lenses. And it's been great to have you guys with us as well. So the Max Loves Midland Show, you can find us every single week. We got new episodes on Wednesdays. And we're sure to have you along next time as well. Whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on WSGW, or any of your podcasting services, or if you're just watching clips online, we appreciate you being along for the ride. Make sure you head over to maxlovesmidland.com. We've had over 4,000 events posted on there. So look for ways that you can interact with other community members and really find your place, because we are looking to see Midland through your lenses as well. Thank you. Subscribe wherever you consume media. Max Loves Midland is your entertainment, resources, and collective improvement hub for Midland County. Plan your next adventure in Midland at maxlovesmidland.com.